You are listening to the Space-Tastic Mysteries podcast. We are continuing Anna Gale Line's third novel in the Jaguar and Peacock series, Lost on Planet M-142. Trapped on the hostile world of Planet M-142, Commander Jessa Peacock Masters of the Intergalactic Intelligence Bureau has spent 3 grueling months undercover, investigating a mysterious cult led by the enigmatic blind prophet, Danielle Jabot. Is Jabot a visionary, a fraud, or something far more dangerous? The deeper Jessa digs, the more tangled the web becomes: secrets, deception, and whispers of an impending assassination. When her husband and fellow operative, Nate Masters, finally joins her, their mission takes a deadly turn. Someone wants Danielle Jabot dead, and the list of suspects is as vast as the stars. As Jessa and Nate race against time, they must navigate a treacherous world of fanatic followers, shadowy enemies, and their own rekindled partnership. With every step closer to the truth, one question looms: is Jabot the target, or the mastermind? This is episode 13, A Deal with a Devil. If you have not subscribed, do so now, and hit the bell to be notified of new episodes.
"What have I done, Graham?" I asked the balding man on my quan pad. He slouched in the tattered green, leather chair in his bedroom. The wrinkles in his night shirt and occasional stifled yawn suggested that I woke him from a deep sleep. I twisted a string that hung from my blouse around my finger in the dimly lit storage room off the apartment. "When Jag finds out what I've done, he will flip. He has this thing about me putting myself and the baby in danger." I looked up into Graham's tired, blue eyes. They were the color of the sky right after a storm. "That man has a problem with you putting yourself in danger at all," Graham replied, leaning back, resting his head on the back of the chair. He raised his head. "I don't know what he thought was going to happen when you two got married. Did he seriously think that you would stop doing your job?" I lowered my head. "But do you think that I did the right thing tonight? Peak, where is this coming from? It is not like you to question yourself." I raised my head to look at him. I told Hawk Pryor and Philip Matthews that I had turned my back on the IIB and was willing to work with them at 40% of the cut. The reality of what I had done finally sunk in. If they find out that I lied, we have to make sure they don't. That's why I need you to tell Jag what is going on. He let out a yawn, patting his mouth with his hand. "But that's it, only Jag. You know I love Bree, but I don't want her knowing this information, at least not until it is absolutely necessary." I nodded, rubbing my temples. My head pounded like a jackhammer on a torn-up road. He leaned forward. "Seriously, you did good. Your back was against the wall. You had to think of something. And making them think you are betraying the IIB to get them is a stroke of genius." We spent a few more minutes discussing strategy before I bid him good night. I stood up, wiped the dirt off my jeans and replaced my weapon in my ankle holster. Grabbing my crutches, I placed them under my arms. I opened the storage room, looked around, then stepped out. I locked the door behind me. I trudged toward the apartment, digging deep in my pocket for my keys. I found the key, shoving it in the apartment door. I turned the knob, moving inside. I locked the door. You never could be too careful who was lurking outside. Continuing down the hall to the bedroom, I made my way to my nightstand. I slid the drawer out. I leaned over and lifted my pant leg, retrieving my 9mm. I set the gun in the drawer and closed it. Then I went about my nighttime routine, changing into my nightgown, brushing my teeth, calling Joey and the kids. I laid the crutches down beside the bed, pushing them underneath. I turned down the bed, slipping into it. Glancing over at the clock, I realized it was after 1 in the morning. My head continued to ache. I sat up, pulled out the nightstand drawer, retrieving a bottle of aspirin made specifically for pregnant women. I stared at the gun in the drawer. I could make out its profile in the darkness. What I did tonight flooded back to my mind. The look on Hawk Pryor's face when I flipped him. Philip Matthews' horror when I told him I was taking 40%. I remembered what Graham had said, but something about the night scared me. I think that it had been so easy for me to bully Pryor and Matthews. I grabbed the handle of the pitcher of water setting on top the nightstand. I poured myself a glass, replacing the pitcher. Putting the aspirin on my tongue, I sipped the water. I set the glass down next to the pitcher, then placed the aspirin back in the drawer. I closed the drawer, staring into the darkness. "Is Danielle Jabot all right?" Nate inquired, turning over to look at me. I could tell by the thick insinuation in his voice that he suspected that I was keeping things from him. He didn't want to talk about her. It was a ruse to get me to the hospital, I informed him without looking his way. "Jag, we have to talk about what happened tonight." My voice sounded as stiff as a wooden board, even to my ears. "You need to know what I've done." He sat up. Leaning over to his side, he switched on the lamp on his nightstand. "Peek, I want to be mad at you, but right now, you are scaring me." He moved closer to me, cupping my face, forcing me to look at him. He stared into my eyes. His own cappuccino-colored eyes widened in alarm. I saw fear blazing in them. "What have you done?" "I made a deal with the devil, or devils, in this case," I said, dropping my head into my hands. "I thought I was going to be okay with this. I have to be if we are going to do this right." He wrapped his arms around my shoulders. "Tell me what's going on." He kissed the top of my head. "We'll get through this together." I lifted my head, leaning back into his arms. I took in a deep breath. I went to the hospital, where Philip Matthews and Hawk Pryor hit me over the head again. I drew my bottom lip in, chewing on it a few seconds. I woke up in what appeared to be a hospital room at gunpoint, so I did the only thing I could think of. I stared ahead, not ready to see Nate's reaction. Which was? I convinced them that I was tired of the IIB and ready to instead use my skills in some rather shady operations. Such as theirs. Such as theirs, I agreed, glancing over at Nate. After I convinced them to let me be their spy inside the IIB, Hawk Pryor got a bit too rough for my tastes, so I flipped him onto the ground. I couldn't quite tell how Nate was taking the news. Usually I could tell by the look on his face, but right now, he seemed to be processing the information. While I had my foot on his chest, I held them at gunpoint. I told them that I wanted 40% of the cut and that the next time I put a bullet in them that it would kill them, if they double-crossed me. I put my hand over my stomach when Lizzie started jabbing me in the ribs. My head still throbbed, the pain slowly making its way to my stomach. Nate let out a low whistle. "Boy, Graham's going to clean your clock when he hears about this." "I already told him," I whispered, pulling the covers closer to me. "He thinks it's a stroke of genius." I rested my head on his shoulder, yawning. I told him ahead of time that there might be trouble, took a guard with me and turned on my homing device. "You still shouldn't. Listen, I couldn't take you with me. You didn't trust my instincts tonight at dinner. You, Colin and Bree acted like I was some rookie agent," I said, feeling exhaustion wash over me. I yawned again. "And I couldn't have you second-guessing my every move and theory just because I am pregnant and have a broken ankle. I'm sorry you felt that way. You know you are a top-of-the-line agent, but your theory is a bit out there." I slid down deep within the covers, turning to face the wall near the closet, moving as close to the edge as possible. He touched my arm. "Peek. Unless you are going to apologize and admit I could be right, leave me alone," I called over my shoulder. I grabbed my pillow, holding it in my arms like a person. "And don't spread a word of what I told you about tonight to anyone. Graham said that only we were to know." Before he could say another word, I gave into the fatigue that racked my body. I sank into the overstuffed chair in the dimly lit bedroom of the apartment later in the week. My crutches beside the chair. I had spent another night, leaking the information that Graham gave me to Hawk and Philip. The third time this week. They trusted me more and more with each passing meeting. I felt dirty. Running my fingers through my wet hair, I sighed. No amount of showers would erase the dirt. Tonight, like the other 2 times this week, I went with them on their rounds as they extorted money from the local business owners. Hawk and Philip had information that they were holding over each of the owners' heads. Impressed by my skills with a gun and self-defense, I became their enforcer. My entire job was to stand in the background, staring at people to give Hawk and Philip their money. At least, all three of us wore masks so people couldn't identify us. I grabbed my Bible, which I kept next to the overstuffed chair, so I could read it before going to bed. The only light illuminating the room was the hall light shining through our open bedroom door. I opened the Bible, then immediately slammed it shut, fingering the leather cover. Nate and Ben's parents had given me that Bible right after I married Ben. I blinked intensively to stop the tears that misted my eyes. I missed them so much. Even when I was just Nate's partner, they treated me like one of their children. They had gone on assignment on one of the Earth colonies 5 years ago, and they never returned. Their bodies were never found, so Nick and Kate Masters were listed as missing in action, according to the IIB. Nate and Joey had all but given up, but I still held on to a shred of hope that they would someday return home. "Pete, why are you sitting in the dark?" asked Nate. Folding back the covers, he sat up. He leaned over and flipped on the lamp next to the bed. Before I could answer, he continued, staring at me. "We need to talk." He pulled the covers up and doubled the end over. "I don't like the rift between us." "If you are just going to tell me how far-fetched my theories are," I countered, placing the Bible on the floor next to the chair, "you can sell it someplace else because I am not in the mood." I leaned back in the chair, folding my arms across my chest as I peered at him. From his disheveled dark hair and the pillow creases on his face, I assumed that he had been asleep for hours. Even in his slipshod condition, his dashing good looks still made my heart race. "I don't even know who you are anymore. I've been thinking that we may have been a bit hasty in dismissing your theory," he stammered, playing with the edge of the covers. I studied his face a moment. He stared at the covers, burrowing through it as though it had hidden treasures buried inside. He swallowed dryly. His fingernails looked as if he'd nibbled at them for dinner. "Translation, you," I interpreted, waving my hand in the air, "or one of the others, found a piece of evidence that proves my theory right." I grabbed my crutches off the floor. Hastily putting them under my arms, I staggered over to the bed. Sitting down on the edge of it, I set the crutches down on the floor. I pushed them underneath. "Am I right?" I turned around to face him, sitting with my legs crossed. He leaned over and slid out his nightstand drawer, pulling out his quan pad. He pressed a few buttons. "This is what we found." I seized the quan pad, glancing down at it. "This is a DNA test for Take Lewis. It proves that Philip Matthews is the father." He took the quan pad away from me, pressing more buttons. He handed it back to me. "We also found this." Scrutinizing it, my eyes widened in surprise. "It's a police report and doctor records confirming that Danielle Jabot was sexually assaulted, resulting in a pregnancy." I twisted my mouth as I handed it back to him. "I suppose you are expecting me to just forgive you and go on. I am sorry I didn't believe you." He lowered his eyes, looking like a puppy who had just messed up my brand new carpet. "You would think I'd learn that your instincts are as good as gold. Remember your instinct about Ben's partner not being who she appeared to be." "Your memory is improving quite nicely," I remarked after a few seconds of gaping at him in stunned silence. Nate climbed out from under the covers and sat next to me. He cradled my face in his hands, leaned in and kissed me. I'd been wanting to do that for days. He kissed me again, deepening his kiss. "Jag, I didn't say I have forgiven you yet." When he kissed me again, I threw my hands up in resignation. I put my arms around his neck and returned his kisses. I peered over at the open door. I broke away from his kisses. The door's open. He hurried out of bed, across the room and locked the door. "Now that we are alone, I have a rain check that needs cashing." He jumped onto the bed, taking me back into his arms. His lips met mine as if they had never left.